What's going on, guys? Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of Schmoedown Backstage. It's Tuesday. It's 12:30. Season carries on, and today, of course, is a pretty unique Schmoedown day. It was a big morning in the Schmoedown. Some things that we are definitely going to discuss. I can't do it alone. I'm joined today by one of the legends, one of the all-time greatest, Rachel, the Crusher, Cushing.
Hi, guys. Yeah, man, last week we have new team title holders. We had a Sassy versus Sassy match. We had 2 semifinals in a tournament. We got news of a Wildberries retirement match. And then to top it all off, we had some big news from Kevin Smets today on SEN Live, which I do think we should start with because he's a very good friend of ours, and we just want him to know, that we have his back in this battle that he has coming up against cancer.
Yeah, it was one of the most upsetting phone calls I've gotten. The phone call I got from Smets a few weeks ago. One of those "are you sitting down" type of moments that somebody asks you. Anytime somebody says something like that, what's coming next is not going to be great. So I was really proud of Kevin this morning for appearing on SEN and then speaking about it the way that he did. Broke my heart. But to go and do it publicly like that, I think, I knew it was so important to him. He mentioned to me that he really wanted to be clear with the fans. He didn't want it to sneak out somehow and someone found out and it was on the Facebook group and rumors. He just wanted to be as clear as possible about it. Because I know that this game means as much to him as it means to just about anybody who's played at that highest level, and his passion is irreplaceable. So I know that it means everything, and stepping away for right now is brutal for him.
Yeah, on top of, what he has to deal with in terms of the chemo and beating the disease, having to leave something that he loves so much, it feels like blow after blow. But I've known him for so long, years before I started playing in the Schmoedown. And as they said on SEN, he's a fighter, and he always has been ever since, I first met him. And he's the type of person who is taking what's happening to him and turning it into something positive. He wants to get the message out. He wants people to, take care of themselves, get themselves checked. If you have symptoms of anything, double check, triple check, you never know. And, I'm so proud of him for, coming out like he did. That was obviously a very difficult thing for him to do. It was difficult for all of us, but we're behind him. And, like I said, I just admire him so much for wanting to get the message out and for turning this into something positive to pass on to the world and to his fans and his friends. And, again, we love you so much, Kevin. You're one of the greatest human beings I've ever met, and we're behind you 100%.
Yeah, you brought Kevin into the Schmoedown. He's one of your close friends, and he's become one of my best friends in the whole world. There's a level of psychosis to what we commit to the game that only very few people have at that highest level of crazy. And yes, there's a kindred spirit, and we take this thing so seriously. And so connecting with people who have that same itch to scratch is always such a wonderful experience. I've spoken about it many times, but the brown rice, dark chocolate, and salmon thing I do before matches now is a thing that I learned from Kevin. It's a thing that's the thing that he told me to do, and I started doing. And I always remember, I've been on the phone with Kevin up till 1 a.m, nights before matches. It's just, he's one of my best friends, and it was a really sad phone call. But as you mentioned, turning it into a positive opportunity to educate and inform people. A very, very, very slow growing form of cancer, and caught at a stage where it is treatable. And so we know that the fight that this guy has and the reason that he's fighting and the things he's fighting for in his life are so important. I just wholeheartedly believe that he'll beat it. I know, and I know that there'll be a moment. I know that there'll be a moment when I get to give him a hug and he's cancer free. And I know that there'll be a moment when he's on stage and the fans are cheering for him when he wins a belt back when he's cancer free. And I think we can look forward to all those moments because I know he's going to do it.
Right here. So I agree. Smash cancer, as everybody's saying. You guys, we're be behind him, and we'll help him in any way we can. And you're right, he will beat this.
And we'll be bringing on guests today, one of whom is Mike Kalinowski a little later in the show, who obviously is one of Smets's great Great rivals in the Schmoedown, so it'll be, I think, more so than focusing on, obviously, the tragedy of it, talking and celebrating some of our favorite Smets memories, because I know Kalinowski has some. I believe Kalinowski beating Smets is probably in my top 3 Schmoedown moments ever. I love that moment of sports competition so much. So I'll be excited to talk about that with Mike. But yeah, I think it was important to address up top, and I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to say about it. Obviously, the tone of the show, it's real life, so it just sort of is, the weight of it is real.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, and we do want to cover everything that happened in the Schmoedown. We're backstage for a reason. We have 2 amazing guests coming on, but we did want to start with a shout out to Kevin and to honor him and to thank him for everything that he's done so far, and to, say we're behind him, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, absolutely. And I suggest, because I know how much it means to Kevin, that anybody who's watching this that feels connected to the guy, tweet at him. He'll see it. Send him a DM on Instagram. He'll probably read it. It honestly, I know, I've been checking in with Kevin as many days as I possibly can, that what it means to him. I know what it means to him to have that support. So support your hero. He's definitely one of mine. So let's talk a little bit about the show. Obviously, as a quick reminder to everybody here, if you haven't watched the matches from this last week, there was a huge pay-per-view this last Friday. It's going to air publicly this Friday. This will be a spoiler show. We are full spoilers today because we do want to talk about the match. We want to be able to break down everything that happened. You can watch the match right now if you're a patron. Obviously, all matches are available to you if you're a patron. It's at patreon.com/Schmoedown. The live tickets to that match, I think you can still watch it. It's still available on VOD. Goes live to patrons, I think $2 yesterday, or $5 yesterday, $2 today, and then it'll go public to everybody this Friday. So it was Gray Drake versus C. Stacey Howard as the undercard, and then, of course, Corruption versus Shazam as the main event. If you haven't watched it, I recommend you go watch it. Both matches were phenomenal. Really, really, really good matches. Yeah. And we are going to be breaking down those matches and talking about everything today. So first and foremost, Rachel, going into this match, what did you feel like? Did you feel like you knew how this was going to go? Did you have a pretty strong sense day of?
I actually said it on Backstage last week. I thought it would come down to Mike in round 1. And I think that's what it came down to. Now, there's other things that happened in later rounds for sure. And he was the first one to admit it in his very emotional, very angry post-interview. That was very honest from him. And, he fell apart a little, and I think it stayed with him to some extent the rest of the match. And I get it. That is the world's hardest thing to do, is to shake off missing the first 3 questions in a match where every point counts so much. And you're watching both Shazam competitors get everything. Even Chance missed the very first question. And that just, I think, set them on, they were off kilter right from the first question and never quite got it back. And that's how the game goes sometimes. Heartbreaking to watch. And I do not take anything away from Shazam. They played their asses off. Like, they were amazing. But I think this comes down to, what happened in round 1.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the way the match starts, and you can obviously look at that first question as foreshadowing for the rest of the match. But I also think that first question was intended to do exactly what it did.
I agree.
And to be completely honest with you, as somebody who's very good in the category, if I was live, maybe I count through it in my head and I get there, but maybe I don't. It's not like the year of Shanghai Nights and Shanghai Noon or things that are like just burned into my brain. Mm-hmm. I definitely saw Shanghai Nights in theaters. Or Shanghai Noon, never saw Shanghai Nights. Okay. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if 2003 doesn't sound outrageous. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the question actually was set up to do exactly what it did. And more impressive, it was incredibly impressive that Shazam both got that right.
Yes.
That Brendan doesn't surprise me because he's great in that category. Mm-hmm. But for Bibiani to get that right is, logically, would you ever guess they'd be asking about Shanghai Nights in round 1 rather than Shanghai Noon with a question like that?
These days, we've talked about it before, there's more and more opportunity, and the writers are taking those opportunities to stop and make you think. And if I was a competitor right now, that would be in the back of my head every single time. And I'm not saying you should second guess yourself every time, but I am saying you need to listen to everything. And the clues in that question were not just 2003, it was the director. It was different directors for Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Night. So they did put 2 context clues in that question to get you there. And it's up to the competitors to be listening for those. And it's a balancing act because right after that, you got some much easier questions, you know, Hocus Pocus and so on that, you know, were much more traditional, if you will. But these days, that kind of, call it a trick question if you want, you know, whatever, it's one that's meant to make you think. And within the question writing itself, there were 2 clues. And
interesting. Yeah.
if you don't hear them,
yeah, I didn't realize there was a director clue. That actually clarifies a little bit more. But I thought it was more fascinating.
420 donated $20. Kevin, our entire community is with you, love you, and are here for you every second in this battle. Much love and support to you, Dasher, and your daughter and entire family. To tweak Sam in Lord of the Rings, we can't carry it for you, but we will carry you.
Well said.
I love that. Well said. Well said. Yeah. Samwise the Brave. We appreciate that. I know Kevin appreciates that. I don't know if he's able to watch. Obviously, I know with his treatment and work, I know he's pretty busy. But
and a newborn.
And a newborn. But I'll be sure to send him a message after this, letting him know everything, literally everything that was said about him and for him. Unless, you know, he is just watching in the background because Kevin could be like that. I'm not sure. So, but I thought it was more kind of crazy and hilarious to me that the guys in Corruption got the movie release dates questions in the speed round, but Shazam didn't. That was astonishing. I was sitting there watching this match with my brother. My brother, by the way, many of you guys know, he's 9 years older than me. He's the guy that like got me into movies when I was a little kid. You know, Point Break was my favorite movie of all time for a long time for that reason, because he gave me the VHS tape when I was a kid and was like, this is so good, but it's so bad, but it's so good. And then I just wanted to be Patrick Swayze in that movie. That's all I wanted. But I was watching it with him and I was like kind of narrating for him. I was like, okay, what's happening here is this, you know, and I was like, Mike missed that first question. I was like, okay, this is a really key moment in the match because, you know, Mike is one of the more dominant players we've ever seen, but he is somebody who momentum can go against him. So you have to really watch carefully here at this next question. Or when we did get to the speed round, I was like, now there's going to be at least one movie release dates question. And the Shazam guys are probably both going to get it. However, if the Corruption guys can get it, it's going to be a big moment. And of course, I was dead wrong about that part of it. I couldn't believe that the Corruption guys both got the question right. That was crazy, right?
Yeah, it's just funny because in the moment, you're never really sure what somebody's going to come out with. And, you know, Mike got the Mummy one, right? Mummy Returns, which is what tripped up Brendan. Poll. Yeah, it was. But I think, you know, I mean, I could be reaching here, but you missed that Shanghai Nights. You missed the context clue of the year, but he hears it here. They asked about the Mummy Returns. They didn't ask about the Mummy, and that's what tripped up Brendan. So he didn't hear it. You know, when you're talking about multiple movies in a series or sequels and things like that, that's a very easy thing to trip up on. So it's like, it sort of seems like Mike learned the lesson from the first question, but Brendan forgot it when he got to it. But I've also never played in this new version of the speed round. And, you know, you're thinking, I've got 30 seconds to get through as many of these as possible. So I'm just going to skip. And then when I come back to it, or I'm going to say the first thing that comes to my brain because I need to get to the next question. It's like, I don't know what's running through your heads when you're going through it. I mean, you've done it. But the Mummy one for Brendan to miss, that actually, you know, trick, for lack of a better phrase, is sort of the way that it went.
You get 30 seconds to answer 5 questions. It takes the question asker about 2.5 to 3 seconds to ask it, which means you have an average of about 3 to 3.5 seconds per question. Right. What's really interesting about that is you kind of, generally speaking, have enough time to hear the question, beat, answer, which is amazing that when they were up as much as they were, Brendan jumped with the Mummy question, because it was sort of the big thing I learned when I was preparing for Dan was if you get 10 out of 10 and you're sure about 10 out of 10, excellent. That's great, right? That's wonderful. Most of the time you won't. Most of the time you'll be a little unsure on one. So if you guess on the one you're unsure on or you answer a little too fast, you're going to lose a point, which means you're going to get 8 for 10, right? So it's really not worth it. It's better to just pass on the one you're a little unclear on, take your time on the other 9, or in this case, the other 4, and just get your 80, get your 90%, whatever it is, if it's singles or it's teams.
Yeah.
But it was pretty fascinating to watch this match, especially how close it ended up being in the end, how competitive it was down till the end. Because that's the thing is Mike missed 3 questions, but that didn't really reflect the way that the match ultimately ended up going. He did rally back. He managed to recover in round 1. They had a great round 2. They had very good speed rounds. I mean, they did well in the final round, the betting round. It was a very, very engaging match. But we're talking about it a lot. We have a special guest who's going to talk to us about the other side of this match. It's somebody who I think every week we say, who's the best manager? Who's the most loved by their players manager in the league? And I think it's safe to say one of the contenders for this is Coy Jandreau, the manager of the Quirky Mercs, who we have joining the show now. From what I can gather here, Coy is sideways. It looks like he's pulling an inverted
Technology is always... Matt.
Oh wait,
What's beyond the Dutch angle? Am I gone now? Whatever's past Dutch is what I managed to bring to the table. Hello,
Coy. I thought you were pulling a Bibiani there. I thought you were going crooked.
It would have made sense.
My tip of the cap.
Yeah. So Coy, you're here. It's days later. You've managed your way to a championship. You did it as a rookie manager. You officially, or you didn't manage anyone last year, right? You are a rookie manager. I'm correct in that?
I'm rookie. I managed once, and it was Winston and Stacy for an exhibition at that live event. But this is my first season.
Yeah. So you go in, you get a really solid draft position. I remember talking to you before the season about who you were going to pick and what was on the table. If I recall, you were drafting 3rd. Is that right?
Yeah, I was 3rd.
So we knew Roxy was going to probably keep her odd couple, group. And it really just came down to whether or not, Sam was going to take McQueenie and Guy. Right. And so you were kind of like, look, if he keeps McQueenie and Guy and I get Bibiani and the kid 3rd overall, you're like, that's crazy. You're like, it's amazing. You're like, I'm kind of set up no matter what happens. But I remember you were so excited to get this team. And so to take them from that draft through here, talk to me a little bit about what it feels to emotionally right now, days later.
Yeah, they were my number 1 pick. So it feels like fate after a year of ups and downs, certainly downs as far as the world's concerned, and definitely downs as far as gaps in playing time. There were so many things pitted against us, but this is exactly how I thought it would land. Like when you visualize the end goal, it's exactly what Friday was. So it was really surreal to know that I had the team I wanted and they played how I wanted, and we did almost like copy and paste how I expected us to do in certain matches. And there were some definite twists thrown in the mix, but overall, I saw us holding belts at the end of the season. I saw us defending, hopefully multiple times. The season, that's obviously changed because of what the year became, but I saw us like defending again and again. And the fact that we will get to defend these belts this year means a lot to me, because that means the belt means something. It's not one of those UFC fighters that gets the belt and then is just like, shh. Like, I'm very proud that we're getting the belts and then we're actually doing something with them. And they played so incredibly that Friday, we weren't playing a team that wasn't worthy of a team's title. We weren't playing someone that was like an implied champion or something that was like long overdue or any of those things in sports where you're like, yeah, team's title. Like, this was corruption. This was a well-earned fight. And at no point was I comfortable, even when we had an 8-point lead, because it was corruption. That's the beauty of a team like Corruption. At 8 points ahead, I was still like, okay, it's a 5-round game. We haven't done one of these yet. I haven't managed one of these yet. Everything to me was a variable. So that's what you want in sports, is things to be exciting. So it's nice to be in the sport and still as excited as anything else, because I hadn't had 5 rounds. I hadn't been in this position, and I knew and trusted my team so much that it was really nice to have all of our coding planned out. We already knew exactly like the plan of attack without having to directly say it, because everyone's watching, which, as you know, is so tricky in this digital age. It's hard to be like, that thing we talked about, because everyone's like, they don't really say anything. I'm like, no, we're saying everything. We're just trying to say it in a way that not everyone gets. So the whole thing overall was color by numbers magic. And I can't possibly respect Shannon and Corruption more than how they came back from that deficit without letting it really get to them. Like, I'm just proud of the game.
At this point, we've had way too many instances of supposed big leads and then had people come back from them. Like that should be a thing of the past at this point. You could be up like 10 points and I would still be like, look, weirder stuff has happened in this game in terms of the luck factors and the categories and things like that. So it's good to hear that, you don't let that go to your head, because you just, like you said, and I mean, I do want to give all the credit in the world to Corruption for making that comeback there. For their round 5 was spectacular. They did everything they needed to do to put it back in Shazam's hands in order, their fate was in their hands at that point. And that's, to be able to do that after the start and the few, misses here and there, that's important. But so Bibbs told us last week he didn't want to say too much because they were going into the match. But now that we're past the match, what were some of the things that you studied or you planned out ahead of time? Like you said, these paint by number things like categories on the wheel, nice codes for your 1 point, point to 3 point betting round, that kind of stuff. Can you, open up the book a little bit and tell us a little of some of those?
So with Corruption specifically, we knew that getting inside their heads was important, but we also knew that Mike is a different player than he was season 6, 5, 4, 3, or 2, or 1. Mm-hmm. Everyone assumes Mike coming out feisty is his weakness, but Mike knows that. So it's not about just getting in Mike's head. It's about getting in Mike's head and not having it be antagonistic. Because 1, that's not how I like to play the game. But 2, that's what everyone's looking for. That's what Mike's looking for. That's what Chance is looking for. That's what Shannon's prepared for. So it was more about the playfulness aspect, which again is what I'd rather do.
The soaps.
So the soaps, the code names, the soaps, the way we planned the wheel was much less antagonistic, as much as it was like, let's lean into our strengths. We know what they'll probably do, so we'll prepare for those things, but we're never going to play into someone else's game. That's how I manage. I don't want to play someone else's game. I want to play my game. So even if it's an underdog team, which I've had mostly underdog games this year, a lot of times it's been like Perry versus Mike. I wasn't going to play Mike's game. I was going to play Perry's game against Mike, and that got us a win. So I went into this very much the same. Like, I don't want to play this against Corruption like everyone else will. Like, everyone thinks the game's going to go. So playfully, like what my scores are, like the 1, 2, 3 points, it's going to be their names. And a lot of people guessed incorrectly what those points were, because I don't want people to assume, even when they're hearing the codes, this is this. And then I also don't want to come at Mike because, 1, I love how much he loves the game. And this is supposed to be an enjoyable experience. But I'm also... it was a championship, and that's why I came out of the gate as hot as I did. Like, it's the Quirky Mercs. I've played Quirky all season. This was the time to be the mercenary. Like, at the end of the day, I am a feisty kid from Boston that has to play nice on most things, but in a championship, I don't. And it was really nice to be able to be the kid that scrapped and Lowell a little, it was really nice to get that out. So I intentionally wanted to come out of the gate at Shannon, because I knew that was the last thing anyone was expecting. I knew that was the last thing her players watching were expecting. I knew that was the last thing anyone watching as an audience member would expect. And I knew it took a little pressure off my team, which is only going to help if they get an extra beat or two in their brain to then dive in. Because even Ellis and Harloff were like, okay, this is... And that means I knew that everyone on the other side of the camera was as well. So it was the most tactics I think we put into anything. And it's a championship. It should be. It wasn't just another match. So we really went in. And then, of course, the kid and Brendan, the way they study is insurmountable. There's nothing quite like those guys. Whenever I'm sitting in on any of their studying, I'm just flabbergasted at where their brain, like, crevasses end. They just find things. And then we did more right before the match and then relaxed in a different way. We had a different, like, spa setup, like mental spa going into the match. And it all worked out because even when there were moments of folly, I saw no trepidation in either of my players. Even when Brendan missed stuff, he didn't get upset at himself. When Bibiani needed to rely on the kid, it didn't feel like it was never two people, it was a team. If they're anything, they're cohesive. And that's what made New York so hard, is I had to manage them separately, and those guys are so a unit. So this, actually mirroring Bateman's statement, this felt better than New York because it's how I thought things were going to go, but I didn't have to, like, you're over there, in my brain, how do we... This was what I thought when I recruited these guys at the Comedy Store, and it was Mozart. It felt right.
Well, I think also, Coy, you mentioned the difference between New York and here. New York was fresh. It was all brand new. You hadn't actually worked with these guys really yet. You hadn't had any experience. Hadn't experienced a win, but you hadn't experienced a loss. And I think that there are a few things that can prepare you for those big moments more than losing in a big moment. There's just some elasticity that comes from when the big moment happens and it just doesn't quite get you there. you're just so much more like, I guess you just know what it's like. You know what it's actually going to be like if it doesn't go your way. And I think that to some degree in sports, you want that rookie invincibility. You know, you want to be the rookie who doesn't get injured because you feel like you can't lose until you do. But at the same time, you know, if everybody gets injured, everybody loses. It happens, you know, it's the metaphor, whatever. But anyway, all that being said, I thought it was interesting to watch the two of your guys go perfect in round one, which I think there was a pretty great expectation that would happen. You know, Bibiani that's his game. Brendan's not too far behind him there. So I think most of us watching assumed it was pretty likely that we'd see something like an 18-14, 18-15 kind of situation going into the second round. Round two went about the way I expected. Strong teams playing very, very well, prepared. Where I think it got really interesting was that your guys had a big lead going into round three. And I mentioned this before. I was watching with my older brother, trying to kind of narrate for him the way this was all going to go. And I was saying to him, so that the wheel spins and it hits video game movies. And so I said to him, so Corruption's going to bet 3 because they have to. But I wonder what Shazam's going to do. Because I was like, I know Bibiani likes these campy movies. I feel like that's kind of his ball game. Is he likes like I just was like, I'll bet you he feels like he's going to know most things in this category. So are they going to be brash about this, or are they going to do the really conservative thing? And if they do, this is a 2-point advantage for Corruption right now. I think that's what's going to happen. It's a 2-point advantage, and that's exactly what happened. and I was like, huh. I was like, but I guess that's just playing careful because you guys just assumed maybe that in the 5th round, no matter what, you would just know more. I mean, what was that moment like? I mean, I guess we watched it happen on screen, but had you talked about this beforehand?
That was one of the moments of not downing Corruption at any point. And to what Rachel said, there is no such thing as too big a lead. There is no insurmountable comeback. Everything has happened this season and will happen. This is literally the season of upsets. So the last thing I wanted was to be in a commanding lead, make a brash decision, and then lose painfully. Because at that point in the game, either of us losing was not disrespectful to our legacy. If we'd gambled and lost on a gamble, that would have felt such like more personal. It would have felt like such a bigger loss. So I thought being conservative was, we're already enough ahead. We don't need these points. It would be a bigger loss than a bigger gain. Where we were on the board, that gain would have meant this much, whereas that loss would have meant this much. And they needed to catch up. And even with their 2-point advantage, it didn't help them as much as it would have hurt us. So we talked very clearly about what the gambling round was going to be. It also helps that all three of us are fairly conservative in our gambling nature. So it just kind of like worked out. And then that's where we thought the game was going to be. And not to be braggadocious, but we thought we'd be ahead at that point. We thought it would be decently commanding, and we thought that we didn't trust ourselves in round 5. So by the time we got to that, we didn't even mention 2 of the names in our code. We literally just said, like, this is how I think we literally narrowed it down to 2 right away. And then we're like, is it this or this? Because we didn't want to go bold because we'd agreed on that. So, and I think it was the right move to this day. Even after getting it right, I wouldn't have wanted the risk of even a 3-point, in either direction. It just didn't feel right.
Makes sense.
So with putting so much effort into the team's title, obviously, and now that you guys are the champions, you're going to have an opportunity to defend at the Schmoedown Spectacular. What's the conversation like as far as singles? You guys haven't even, I mean, obviously your 2 guys are not in it at this point this year. The tournament's still going on. Two of the, I'd say the higher prospect players going into the season. Is there real focus on, no question, you're retaining your 2 guys. They're going after retaining, and one of those guys being the first singles champion of 2021. Is that a conversation that's happened yet?
I was so impressed with every one of my players in singles. I mean, Perry took out Mike. I really like the match that we lost the kid in was down to a half. Like, it wasn't even a full question. It was like one of those like alley-oop beats. Like, we lost by a point, and it was a variable of a multiple choice. Like, that loss was. He had to not only be perfect, our competitor had to not only be perfect, but he had to be perfect within a margin of that frame. So for me, I'm not really worried about how they played in singles because Bibbs they both had incredible paths to get there. Like, they didn't have easy challenges, and they shouldn't have. They're that caliber player. But I know that next year, those little foibles have been learned. These guys win or learn. And like you spoke to, when you don't win, you do learn way more, arguably, than when you do win. So I think they'll come back stronger in 2021 for these near wins, because I don't feel like we had a single loss. I feel like we had a lot of near wins, and that might be cocky, but it was real close all the time. I at no point was worried for my main 2 in teams, and I at no point was worried for any of my 4 in singles. And then it worked out that way. So my biggest problem next year is how I pick 3 out of 10. Like, my biggest struggle is what I'm going to do to narrow it down. There's no one I'm disappointed in my entire draft. And that's a great problem. But next year, it's going to be everyone seeing how well they've done and me going like, yeah, I called it, but shit. So, but poop.
No swearing. No swearing. Come on, Coy.
But feces, gosh darn it, is going to be a struggle. So I think next year's draft's going to be another animal. All of us saw what this season became. You and I spoke probably more than anyone before the draft last year, and you know that I had my list of 14, and all 10 of those became mine. But my 4 variable, those people all played incredibly this year as well. But the problem is now my underdogs aren't underdogs. So I'm going into this with this incredible roster that I have to figure out what to do with. But to answer your initial question, I have no doubts in either of my guys as singles champions next year. And I have no doubts that they know what they want to change. And if anything, they're just studying right now because they're absolute madmen. Right. They are maniacs.
So I know we have some Streamlabs and Super Chats already for you. I want to bring on Ben Goddard here. Guys, remember that, the reason that we're able to do this show every single week, the reason we're able to bring you this show, Winston's show, the Inner Geekdom show on Mondays, coming up next with Brad and Jen on Thursdays, Christian's show, one-on-one. All of the additional content that comes to you here on SEN, including 5 days a week of SEN Live, it's because of your support. And so your Streamlabs, your Super Chats, getting that Schmoebot going, that's what keeps this network alive. It's what puts Rachel and I in these seats, and it means the world to the network if you do that. So while we have Coy here, when we bring on Mike, getting your Streamlabs and Super Chats, get that Schmoebot going. If you want to compliment Coy's mustache, if you want to ask Rachel a question, if you want to rile Mike up, whatever you want to do, you are. Hey, look, it could be positive too. The guy's one of the 5 best players to ever play it. You can just say something nice. I'm not taking shots.
I just love the branding, mustache. Look how great Rachel is. Mike, we got to get at him a little bit because he's one of the 5 best.
Hey,
we got to make those plays.
At this point, if I didn't take a tiny friendly jab at my friend,
we'd wonder what was wrong.
I think it'd be off brand. Exactly. I haven't taken one shot at Viviani totally show, not a single shot, and you're here, so I haven't even done it yet. You played wonderful. Let's bring Goddard on and get some questions.
Hey guys, Maximilian, glad to be back and donating. What missed question was more surprising, Scarface or John Williams?
Oh, in the Gray Drake match?
Yeah.
I don't know the Scarface one, but I remember John Williams was a 2-pointer.
Stacy missed Scarface in round 1, and then Gray Jake missed John Williams as a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer.
No, I think John Williams was
her 2-pointer.
Okay, yeah. So it was a round 3.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I think if you're in the Schmoedown, I think the bigger, more surprising miss is John Williams. I think if you're a normal movie person, the Tony Montana is the bigger miss. Because if you're in the Schmoedown, there's only really 2 composers' names in history that are like the go-to, you just guess if you don't know it names. And there's really actually only one. It's just John Williams. But you could say Hans Zimmer if you are like, I know another composer, right? That's like pretty much the only 2 names. So that's why I was just like, I think you're aware of who John Williams is. Just say the one name you can think of, probably. That was why that one to me. Because if you're in the Schmoedown, you have to be aware that might get asked, like a composer exists. Whereas Tony Montana, I feel like, is in that just like the general movie public knows who that character is. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and Stacy definitely seemed to be kicking herself. So I think she realized as soon as afterwards, is like, oh yeah, duh, kind of. I should have known that thing. The composer thing is one of those. John Williams is the easy answer. And so therefore, if you're not a composer person, if you're not a movie scores person, you talk yourself out of it. It can't be the obvious one, but it's a 2-pointer. So that's when you have to argue with yourself and be like, no, it's a 2-pointer. It probably is the obvious one. But that's one of those categories that there's a ton of players that are just like, I have no idea. I've never paid attention to the names of the composers and the scores. Whereas, Mark Riley, myself, and some other people, I listen. That's what I listen to. That's what I own. I have more CDs of scores than any artist, any band, any single artist. But that's a very personal thing. But if you're competing in the Schmoedown, you should probably just look over James Horner, Hans Zimmer, John Williams. She did guess Howard Shore, right? So at least that's
it was reasonable. Yeah. Rachel, question for you: Do you offhand, by the name of it, know the track "On the Nature of Daylight" by Max Richter? Do you know that song?
Yes, yeah, it was in Arrival, and I was like geeking out in the theater when it was playing. But it was also in Shutter Island.
And also, I just listened the other day. I just rewatched Stranger Than Fiction. It's 3
Oh,
movies.
I haven't seen
song.
that in forever. Oh my God.
Crazy. I was like, it's like one of my single favorite songs. I listened on Spotify more times that year than any other song when I found it. I didn't know it was in 3 movies. Anyway,
that's my single favorite piece of music. That and the last song and Babel are my 2 favorite pieces of music.
Oh,
and
that's beautiful.
Yes, and that one 2-time best composer winner.
Boy, don't worry. I have the same look on my face too, brother.
Remember, all of my music has words in it, and I'm so sorry to be uncultured, but all of it has words, and I'm very not in here. But to answer the question,
right there with you,
as
bud.
someone who once competed, I would argue that sometimes the easiest questions are the hardest because of that beat of not thinking and you overthinking it. So when I was watching, both of those questions struck me as accidental 5-pointers just out of going like, no, it's impossible. And then it is a 2-point answer. So I think sometimes that, like when I played in the Inner Geekdom, I forgot Thor. Like things just happen. So I would argue the easier sometimes get you.
We almost question. I mean, it happens to everybody.
Maximilian. I love the difference between Bibbs saying, "We're done, this is over," at the end of his speed round compared to Kalinowski calmly saying, "I yield my time." I don't know why, but I found that hilarious. What is the boss's version of yield my time?
Well, I know that when I was on stage in New York, not this last year with you, Coy, but the year before, the beginning of 2018, after the tackle, or 2019 at the tackle, I had talked to Christian about this bit that I wanted to introduce where I wanted to start saying meeting adjourned. That was going to be like a thing we tried. And I tried it. I think I said it on stage after the thing. I think I said meeting adjourned. I think I never tried it again because it just didn't really land. But I think if I was in a speed round, if I was going to do it, I would say meeting adjourned. That's what I would say.
Very on brand.
It's a good suit quote. You have to be in a suit to say that one.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we all try things. I had the mirror of genius. I mean, I've tried many things. Yeah.
How would you rank Shazam as an all-time team now? Which teams do you keep above them?
I mean, here's the thing about that. So I was going to ask you this in a minute, Coy, but it's a good lead-in for it. The Patriots' all-time record is 9-2. They're considered like the most dominant team in terms of length, the longevity of how long they did it, how many times in a row they won. And their record's 9-2. Now they did play in a different era, but it's a crazy record. Shazam's 8-1. Like the reality of Shazam having a better record all time than the Patriots would just be 2 defenses. And I'm not saying that like 2 defenses is easy because it's not. But if you guys were to defend twice, you guys would just go to 10-1. So I think it's a pretty rare company that Shazam is in right now. Rachel obviously is a member of arguably the greatest team that's ever played it. What do you say? You can leave the Shirewolves out of it if you want, just out of I know you're humble.
Well, and
I know. Sorry, go ahead. You are humble, but I'm very curious about.
Coy wants to. He wants to insult you. Right now.
I'm coming at the Shirewolves now.
Hey, I would just say what Ben mentioned is that the nature of the Patriots, largely being considered top of the mountain, is because of not just the 9-2, but that how many of them were title defenses. Now, different eras, different days, the matches themselves, people argue all kinds of things, and that's fine. That's part of the fun of the debate. But what Shazam has done up until this point warrants consideration, a defense, and then a second defense. I mean, the team's belt doesn't get defended more than once very often. Patriots and Shirewolves are the only people to do it twice. And then the Patriots went on to do it several more times. So I think it's a combination of those things. So, best team ever, you defend it twice. I think that there is a very strong argument to be had at that point. But as we always said, those of us that were playing and in the consideration, it's one match at a time, look to the next match. Defending is always the thing, and that's one of the heartbreaking things about Corruption, 2-time belt holders that haven't been able to.
$20 for Coy. In the title match, the answer to a question was spotlights, and Chance spelled and said spotlights. Taking away from the fact that Christian and Mark should not have accepted that answer, was there a reason why a challenge wasn't thrown out?
There actually was, and I feel like Okay, so the way I play the game isn't the way most people play the game, and this is going to make me sound like a bad manager, but I'd rather be honest. I come from the school of he knew the answer, and it wasn't like Eat, Love, Pray. To me, I heard spotlights, saw spotlights, and in the moment, Ace can get added while you still know the answer. And I know a part of me could have challenged that. I know that other managers would, and I know that I wouldn't judge those other managers. I know other players would, and I wouldn't judge those other managers or players. But at the same time, the pressure of this game, the way they were playing, and the fact that I didn't want to come at them as that would describe my entire tactic. I wasn't trying to get in their heads that way because I wanted to play this game. He knew the answer. I could have been that guy. I opted out very consciously. That might make me a lesser manager, and that could have cost me. It wasn't the tactical choice, but I really don't like when this game becomes a game of inches. I like when it comes. I like watching UFC when it's a stand-up fight more than wrestling. That makes me a bad MMA fan because wrestling is more technical. Wrestling is more advantageous for the fighter. But I like boxing. I like crazy flying knee kicks. I would rather win with a crazy flying knee kick that's riskier than win with a 5-minute on-the-ground wrestling match. And I know that makes me both a lesser manager and a lesser UFC fan, but I accept that as a bro. So I broed out and went, I want to see this win not come from semantics. I didn't want to argue the Punisher versus Punisher. I didn't want to argue spotlights. I wanted to win cleanly because it was a championship, because I saw Shazam with that belt and I envisioned it in January. I wanted to win it holding it high instead of holding it on an S.
Yeah, but let me ask you this quick, because I totally hear your point here. It's a totally valid opinion to have. And you had the luxury of winning. So it's a great one that in retrospect you can look at that moment. But what if you'd lost by 1 point? Just the same thing. You'd envisioned it. You'd envisioned the win. You knew your guys were that talented. They played so well. Maybe your guys missed their 5, and maybe Corruption goes perfect in the final round, and it comes down to 1 point, and you lose the match because of it, and you look back. Does your opinion immediately change and you never do that again? I mean, to me, it seems like that if we compare this to sports, there are rules, right? The rule is you write the correct answer. Now, you're not always going to win the challenge. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But Spotlights, that's a different movie than Spotlight. The Punisher, different movie than Punisher. There's three Punisher movies. And I don't know if anyone's called a Punisher versus the Punisher, but I mean, those are totally valid challenges within your rights as a manager that you have a pretty decent shot of winning, and it's a title match. I mean, is that something that you think changes in the future?
So Punisher versus the Punisher, I was closer. However you can argue microseconds in your brain. Like I was very much like, and then when Brendan said it, that was like, I felt that was the start of the challenge that didn't go somewhere, and that kind of absolved my brain. Whereas Spotlight, the entire rest of that round, I was like in turmoil as a manager. Like, am I failing my team? Am I doing this? So I do worry in part that there will be a day that comes, and that will be the day that we talked about, like, you know, you learn from your losses, and that might happen, and I might become the cynical manager that's yelling, you know, get off my lawn from the side. Like, I could easily turn into Clint Eastwood arguing with the chair. I won't be at the RNC, but I could be arguing with the chair. It could happen. But I for now, I really like the clean victory, and I do understand both sides, and that could change with one match. But where I stand right now, I want the challenges to be bigger. Than no disrespect to Bibbs, I love him to death. I want them to be bigger than Sir and Lord. Because I don't want us to become the challenging faction. I don't want us to become the semantic win. And I get why sports rules are important, but I also understand that even the biggest game in the NFL, sometimes a yard is actually a foot, and people just like semantics. So I want to find that line, and I haven't yet. And this is my first season as a manager, and I'm sure this will come bite me in the booty, PG-13 show, and I will accept that then. But for now, I really liked our win, not having to deal with challenges personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of conversation specifically from the chairman himself saying that for the next season, he is interested in there being a much more of a focus on benefit of the doubt and root of the question. And so I do think that the type of challenges that we're talking about that have become commonplace in the game probably become less common as we move forward.
I think there's two games. You know, there's the game that's chess, and then there's the game that's Chinese checkers. Chess is a more intellectual game that's a lot more rewarding when you win, but Chinese checkers is a lot more fun, and I'm trying to find the blend of both. I think checkers is too easy to compare to this game. That's why I went Chinese checkers. But I think there's, you know, you want to find the version that's both of these things. And I want to answer the original question before that lovely voice chimed in. I think Shire Wolves sits atop the teams for a reason. That's why I almost cut off a member of the Shire Wolves to sing her praises. But I think the Shire Wolves belongs where it does because of the defenses, because of the individual games played, because of some of the questions being like, just to this day, years later, flabbergasting to look at. Their matches have been, you look at them and you go like, I don't understand how the brain works that way times two. It's just a lot. And I would argue there are plenty of that with Shazam. We just haven't had enough defenses for that caliber of like, blah. And I do think once we're at 10-1, which is why when you asked me what I saw for the season, I mentioned multiple defenses. My dream was 2020 be that 10-1. Like I saw that being, we're 2 defenses away from that exact thing. We're so close. We're literally 2 games from that being an option. And maybe if we didn't have those months of quarantine where we were figuring out digital, that could have happened. It was a stretch goal, but I thought maybe December 10-1 was an option. Now I do see 10-1 as an option for Shazam in 2021. And I do see us earning that spot on Rushmore. And I am also at the same time, whoever we defend against, that's all that's going to matter that day. We'll celebrate 9-1 first. Then I'll acknowledge the Rushmore 10-1. But for now, I've seen long-term 10-1, just like Connor see two belts. You know, you got to get that first one first. So I do want us there. I do see Shazam with that caliber. But, like, there's a reason you look at the Shire Wolves and go, like, that's not human. But, like, Adam Collins is the same. I feel like Adam Collins is this year's, like, what are you made of, sir? So I'm excited to see where we get next season because every year the bar is raised to such a level that whoever becomes the new team's holy crap team has to have all of their rounds be that incredible, has to play like 2 Collinses. And I'm looking forward to that being what Shazam does.
They're well on their way. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. I think the you know, anytime you get into that conversation of greatness in any sport, any kind of competition, it's the same thing. We always talk about it. It starts with championships. That's where people look first. And then after championships, you look at things like accomplishments, you look at records, the era in which they did it. So I think, you know, winning a championship is the first qualifier to be in that conversation. You know, I mean, I think Shazam gets to be in there have been so many great teams. You know, the Family was a really great team. Who's the Boss was a great team. Yeah. Until Shazam won the title, they're kind of still in the mix with Critically Acclaimed and all those teams. Now you win the title, you guys jump to that next level. Now you're in that conversation with the Corruptions and with the Shire Wolves and the Founding Fathers of the world. And I think it's just a question of how many wins there. So I would see a couple defenses would make it a real conversation for greatest team of all time, because I think defending twice in any of the divisions is extraordinarily difficult, especially in this era now where the teams are everybody in every division feels like they're made of metal. Like it doesn't feel anymore like there's humans entering. I like literally think about going at this thing another time this next year, and I'm like, I'm going to have to wire my brain, like get a surgical procedure to make me 15% smarter if I want to win. If I want to have any shot other than just like random luck, I have to do
all
something.
Those nootropics they sell, you're like alpha brain, blah, blah, blah. You're like fucking season. Because it's not only that, it's the new rookies are such a different level because they've studied the game as this season. Like they're seeing the source material. It's like when someone wins something in the Olympics, the next person that does it beats it by like 5 seconds, then that's quickly squashed. Like once the human brain sees it's possible, it's a pole vault over it. So I feel like I'm terrified of the rookies next year because they're watching this season's champions, and this season's champions would have squashed season 2, 3, and 4's champions potentially easily. So I'm terrified for the level of challenge to come, and that's why it's so hard to look at just the numbers. That's why it's so hard to look at the record as like these just, you know, the 10-1 is a relative compared to what we're living in now because the questions are so different. There was a time this was, you know, filmed at Popcorn Talk in fun little outfits. Like it's a different game every year. And it's going to change next year too. So hopefully whenever we get back to live, that's going to feel different than digital. We're all going to have to change our management style. We're all going to have to look at the way this whole game is played. So I think looking too far to the future only hurts the team or the player individually. I think looking at your next match and then hoping for the future is the only way to prep.
Well, you know, it's really interesting. I just rewatched Moneyball, which is probably the 5th or 6th time I've watched it. And it's one of my favorite movies. It's an incredible movie. The movie ends and there's the epilogue. And I know you guys are both Boston folks, so you obviously know the epilogue because it was Breaking the Curse. And you guys took that Moneyball system and you went and won the World Series. And the conversation that, you know, Jonah Hill has with Brad Pitt towards the end of the conversation is like, you know, you didn't even realize you hit a home run, right? That's kind of the idea. You changed the game. And so I think about watching as we've gone from 1 perfect game to like 7 perfect games in 3 months. You know, basically in the singles division, we went from something never happening a single time to it happening like every 3rd match. And what it looks like to me when I watch it is I think, and I've been very open about this, I think that there are plenty of players in the Schmoedown that know more than I do. I think I know a lot about movies, but I don't think by any means I get to be in that conversation with the Bibianis of the world who I feel know the most. That being said, I approached this game from a really, really specific place in 2019. I had a very, very, very dialed kind of exploitive. I wanted to exploit the rules and to find a way to win my own way, right? And I think I did that. I think it worked. I won exactly that way. Now, I think most people at that elite level are kind of doing the same thing. And if you plugged any of those all-star baseball players into the Oakland athletic system with the Moneyball system, well, yeah, obviously those guys that were all-stars that were incredible would have excelled if they were also exploiting the statistics. And that feels like what's happening is now you're seeing the most knowledgeable people taking that. I mean, you listen to Bibbs talk about studying for the Schmoedown. He talks about it in a way totally different than he did 18 months ago. He doesn't talk about it anymore like he's going to watch a lot of movies and rely on what he knows. He talks about it now as he's going to take seriously every corner and aspect of the game. He learns from the kid. He wants to play it differently. He wants to play it smarter. And you just watch that happen. You literally watched Corruption, a really dominant team, an incredible two-time champion, pound for pound, moment by moment, just get beaten because Shazam was just that good. I mean, even Bibbs pulling Idris Elba as his 3-point question was an unbelievable pull.
Yep.
Incredible pull. Brendan got one of those totally bizarre 2-point questions where you're like, a new release, one of the 2 leads of a movie that came out this year. The trailer was a big deal. I remember we reacted to it, watched it 3 times on Popcorn Talk. We all talked about it. And they asked the question. I was like, no chance. I know exactly who Damian Bashir is. I know the movies he's been in. I know that he was nominated for an Oscar. I can picture him. I didn't know he was in The Grudge. I didn't see The Grudge. I could have gotten John Cho, but I wouldn't have gotten the other lead. And it's a tough 2, but like you guys withstood so much to get there. And to me, that's a long run way of saying, I think the game's changed. I think the next year, I think the categories need to expand drastically. I think it's the only way to keep it interesting because I think you're going to have too many players coming in and doing exactly what players right now are doing, which is just, I don't think you want every other game to have a perfect performance. I think it's got to be a little tougher to go 100% accuracy in your matches than for it to be every other game. I don't know, just my opinion. What do you guys think?
I remember thinking that about a year or so ago when round 1 started to get a little easier. And then, we went for seasons, nobody got a perfect first round. And then they adjusted it because they used to be different sets of questions for them. And so it was a whole different thing. But it wasn't until like season 4 that somebody got a perfect first round. And
Cody Hall.
I think, he was that was one of the early ones. Like,
it was a good one, yeah.
Yeah, and the round 1 started to settle into we've talked about it before. Name the director, name the movie, name the big star for the most part, and perfect first rounds now. I'm not going to say they're not impressive. They are, of course, but they were starting to feel a little dime a dozen. So many different people could do it. So I'm always a big proponent of making sure there's at least 1 or 2 questions in there to make them earn that perfect. And so you can extend that to the whole match as well. That's why I'm glad the 5-pointers are hard. I think they should be hard.
I was gonna say you could tell the round 1 changes when RB 0-3 could get a perfect first round in his match. So,
aw, give yourself some credit.
I would have loved playing season 4 Schmoedown, man. I tell you, ego boosting. That said, I do think there's a different mental game when you expect to get a perfect first game and then you fall because you think it's easy and you slip up, kind of like what we're talking about with John Williams. So I think that there is merit in this delusion of easier that then stumbles you, and then the rest of the game you're off and you have to rebuild. So I think it'll be interesting if they change next season the roller coaster ride, because everyone's had a year of training in this version of the game. So if we change it next year, I could see people taking 3 or 4 games to really get this new system and groove, which it'll be harder to know what to do for training, which is a benefit to the viewer and the game. But it's also going to be going to a different game, which is what caused, I think, a lot of the challenges this year. I think the first half of this year having so many challenges was people being like, this is a different game, and how did this happen? And it's going to be interesting whether or not that goes positive or negative for players and viewers and commissioners and the higher ups and the people absorbing the content. So I think there's merit in both, but I do think that if it's a matter of a bunch of kids versus Collins games, that'll be a problem. When it's like a half question off, that can't happen all the time. And with our rookies coming like this, that could be next year if it's not tweaked. So I agree with Ben. It was the long I diatribed for yes.
Well, we've only got you for a couple more minutes here, Coy, and we do have a few more Streamlabs and Super Chats for you. Get your Streamlabs and your Super Chats in now, guys. Please support what we're doing. It definitely helps. It is the biggest thing you can be doing, that in the Patreon. So let's get some of these last ones in for Coy.
Let's see. Trash Panda. Coy, question as a manager. Do you study movies for matches your faction plays? I know you as a host, pundit, podcaster, and former competitor were knowledgeable in your own right. Curious how that factors into being a manager.
I do. I don't expect to ever know as much as my competitors. I accept that weakness in myself, but I do use that to look at who we're playing and look at their strengths and use my own knowledge to kind of guide the training of my competitors. Accepting that I can't play as well as any of my people was a very important Band-Aid when I decided to manage. When I was managing Winston and Stacy, I loved that it was everything about the game that I loved without me embarrassing myself. So I immediately was like, this is what I want to do. Christian and I talked, everything worked out. But then I knew that I couldn't manage just enjoying it, because that's not work. That's not a sport. It's not just fun. So I had to look at how I could be an asset to my team versus me just being like, I'll make a cool promo. I promise I'll work hard. Like, I want to be an asset to them in every tier. I want to be an asset for keeping calm, cool, and collected. I want to be an asset for positivity. I want to be an asset for making an awesome promo. I want to be an asset for being a coach in the corner. But in training, I also want to have at least something to say if they reach out in a panic. I want to have a movie to suggest. I want to have a fun fact to make them calm their nerves. A lot of times, if you just go like, hey, what's this? And you make it a hard one and they know it, they're like, oh, I do know movie trivia. But if you don't know the question to ask, you're failing them as a manager. So my movie knowledge, I do think is essential, and I do think it separates me from some other managers, and I do think it separates me from being just a fun little talking head. But I have to acknowledge with humility, I'll never know as much as these people, so I have to find ways to be helpful with my corner of knowledge while also going, I will make a cool promo.
Cool.
Wow. Making his case for manager of the year.
Modi, I mean, Winston though, man, I love that Winston, every time Winston comes out and he's like, I learned everything from Coy, it's the most bittersweet, like, and he's doing it so well. Like, it's so hard to be like, I've taught him and look at him exceed. I think that the Modi race is brilliant because of the challenge. I think Shannon, Gucci, there's so many people that have really put the work in. So it's funny that, like, it's not just the sport of the players. There's not many sports where you're like, let me look at how the coaches are handling things. Like, actually, I know like 3 coaches in the UFC and like 4 in the NFL. But this season, the coaches are a part of it. And the managers, like, the Modi race is real. And I do cut the best promos in the game.
And Gucci puts in no work. All right, what's next?
Rats and King. I just realized today that Shazam is actually the only team that has played every single protected team from that went into the draft this year. That's pretty crazy.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's your guys' matchups have been, you've definitely played a lot of really, really, really strong teams. There's no doubt about it. So
we came out of the gate playing Final Exam and that was after Ring Rust. Like, what if, hey, we want to go for that belt. Let's just take on these Titans. Like, there was no warm-up fight. We didn't have like Rocky IV montages. We just went against Apollo. So it was an honor to play the way we did, but it certainly was not unnoticed that it was those teams.
Yeah. Dagan, just wanted to show some love for Coy. Been a fan ever since you were speaking 1,000 miles per hour in the final rounds of movie fights. What do you think about establishing the rule? Did you think about challenging the Punisher question?
Yeah, I think we answered that one already.
Yeah, I spoke to that earlier, and I do think part of my benefit as a manager is my 1,000 words a minute, so thank you. I get a lot done in those 60 seconds. I think the rule would be a good way to have a definitive take on the 2 different games I was speaking to earlier. I think an article rule in general and something that implies, I think if you know the movie and they up the difficulty, then that would be an interesting new game, because if you make the 2-pointers harder so the first rounds are more difficult, but there's less detail semantics, then I think it would solve a lot of people yelling those things that will go one way or the other. Because I also feel bad for, the viewer. If the challenge doesn't go their way, I feel like they might feel slighted. And that's another tricky element that I am so glad I'm not in Christian or Ellis's shoes, because this is their baby and they have to decide what counts and what doesn't with these challenges. So I think a universal rule would help that. But a universal in which direction, I couldn't begin to say because I'm not smart enough, and that's what they do.
Cool. Let me see. J.O. First all, prayers to Kevin Smets and his family. When Snyder missed the Hollywood Shuffle item, it dawned on me that because older Black-centric films weren't promoted in the mainstream, many seem like blind spots for some who study them now, but I never grew up watching them. What question is he talking about?
Yeah, he's talking about in the Snyder versus Irwin match. Yeah, there was like a 70s question. I think it was 70s that was missed. Yeah, I mean, we haven't really had much time to talk about that, but we only have Coy for a couple more minutes here, so I think we can maybe recap a couple of this last week's matches once we get Mike in here.
Teresa Sky, congrats, Coy and Shazam. You all deserve it. # soap.
Shazam.
I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through these. Cinemaster, for Coy in the title match, the answer to a question was spotlight, and Chance spelled and said spotlights. Taking away from the fact that Christian and Mark should not have accepted that answer, was there a reason why a challenge wasn't thrown out?
Yeah, we did talk about that one at length earlier. So you can.
I think Spotlight is my legacy, and it's a Boston movie, so now it's extra haunting.
Sorry, that was a Schmoebot. My bad. I didn't see the dollar amount.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Trash Panda, did Coy have to feed Spidey Cat during the match like Ellis did with Molly?
Favorite question. So I actually record so much. I don't know if you follow me in other stuff, shameless plug. But between like YouTube and podcasts and how many things I do from home, I actually asked my grandma for an automatic feeder for Spidey for my birthday. So I have a feeder that feeds Spidey 5 times a day so that I don't accidentally forget or have to be in the middle of the stream and run away. And he's the neediest, most loving cat ever. So he'll remind me with snuggles and love, which seems endearing, but you're also like on camera. So Spidey has an automatic feeder like the bougiest cat in the game. He also has a waterfall for his water. That cat is beyond loved, and I wish I lived as well as him.
Awesome. I believe that is it. Did you get that super chat for Coy, Ben?
The one from Newton Lambert you're talking about?
Yeah.
You know what? I was looking at it, but I don't remember if I read it. Why don't you read it out?
I got it right here. Hi, Coy. Big congrats to you and Shazam. How would you describe your management style in one word? Oh, the ultimate Coy challenge.
One word, Coy. It's all you got. Oh.
Zealous.
Okay. There you go. There you have it.
That's a good one.
Zealous.
He drops the mic. Coy, thank you so much for coming on the show. Congratulations.
Congrats to you and Bibbs and to Brendan.
Champion. Big salute to you, brother. Be sure to follow along everything Coy is doing. Has an awesome YouTube channel. Bunch of other cool stuff. And Coy, look, man, Modi, you know, if it's not Winston, it's not Gucci. So maybe it's you.
I want it. And much love to Shannon. I didn't get to speak of how well she did in that match enough because I was so impressed trying to not say that on camera. It's so hard to be like, and the other person's doing a great job against me. But Shannon brought them back, kept them like cool-headed. And I mean, Shannon, there's a reason she wears the crown. And I was honored to sarcastically as well. So much love to everyone in this game and much love to the fans that are so zealous themselves. And thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks, Coy.
Thanks for coming on, Coy. We appreciate it, man.
See you guys.
So take care, brother. So right now we are going to be bringing on our second guest on the show. We're going to be bringing on somebody you guys know well. You know his name. You know his personality. He's a 2-time teams champ. He's a 2-time Inner Geekdom champ. He's a former rival of Rachel the Crusher Cushing. And you just watched him in a match this last week. We welcome to the show right now, Mike Kalinowski. There he is. How you doing, Mike?
Oh, hey guys, how are you?
Good, man. Good. How's the week? How's the week? I know. Somebody's gone through the big match, the post-mortem. A couple days later, how you feeling?
Live and learn, I guess.
It's a good motto for the Schmoedown. I think more of us need to adopt it.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like right now the sort of your attachment to the wins and losses? You've obviously had 2 championships in 2 divisions, so you've climbed the mountain, had the huge celebration. You've had the big moments of loss as well. Where does this moment right now sort of fit in that legacy for you? Are you handling it differently than you've handled it in the past?
No, this one hit hard. This is like right around with the Smets at Spectacular last year. This is a tough one. I'm sorry, is that real loud for you guys? I'm sorry, I'm hearing trucks in the background.
You're all right.
Okay, I can close my window if you need to. This is a tough one. It's like I said in my post match. I mean, from what I remember of the post match, you get that different hit space. It hits hard when you study, when you're more prepared than you need to. Not that you need to be. Like I knew weaknesses after Founding Fathers. I knew what they were. It's my round one. And that's what me and my team were working on, just shoring up my round one. And I think I had the worst round one I've ever had. So I'm at a place now where I'm looking like, what do I do? What my studying is not working because, and I didn't say it superfluously in the post match. Like every match I played along the season, I score 7 out of 8 every single time minimum. So, they were a little tricky. And I know Patrick tries to do that. The whole Shanghai night, Shanghai noon. Yeah. They gave us the 2000s, which they're both 2000, 2003. So all they gave us is a director, and both are 2 directors that I couldn't tell you if they've directed anything else ever. Tom Day, I think, his first one, and then David Dobkin. So I'm like, so we're going tricky on the first question. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be a tricky round one. We're going to look at tricks. So then when the witches came up, I'm like, oh, it's the witches. That's what I wrote down was the witches. And that's why I was like, I didn't think Hocus Pocus. It's like, that's too easy. Spotlight was, if Keaton was in there, I would have got Spotlight. But for some reason, Ruffalo was just sticking. I know they said the Boston Globe. And at that point, I don't know if I was in my head. And then Hocus Pocus, I'm like, it was that or Inside Out. And I don't know if there's in the video you could see, like I almost say repeat the question because I'm like, is it Inside Out? Yeah. I was like, nah, that's not. And my reasoning was, it's too stupid a tagline for a Disney movie. I was like, Disney's too good for something like that. That was my reasoning. I don't know what to tell you. It's disappointing, but man,
I'm curious. First of all, your post-match, and I'll say this because I know a lot of fans have said it, and it's one of the things we love about you is your honest emotion. And you've had super emotional matches in the past for winning, for losing, all of it. You put your heart and soul into it, and you leave it all on the table. It's funny, to look back and think that post-match interviews have become so integral. I mean, you think of some of the ones that Rocha has had. You think, the Shire Wolves in Clark saying "We are the league," and and you've had so many memorable ones. This was the first time where you were angry, and it was interesting because, and I think, well, I'd love to hear what you think, but it seemed to me because it was about a team and a faction as much about you, because like you said, losing to Smets was tough because you felt ready for that one and it just nothing was falling your way. Something similar happened, but you kept saying that you felt like you were letting down your team, and I know Shannon, I know Chance, I know the people in Corruption, and I know they don't think that way. But is it different when you're talking about it from a team perspective and also a faction perspective than say an individual? Yeah,
it was like I'd said, my name is the team, where it came from, and they were there. It's not like it was just me every single night studying. It was like all these guys in these Zoom calls and these StreamYards studying for 3-4 hours and knowing how bad, with Chance is like, and I've owned it. I've said, I know Chance is the stronger player when it just comes down to it with Chance and I. He's a stronger player. And to feel like you let him down so hardcore, in the whole faction. And it's like, we came from the bottom to where we are and to not feel like you're pulling your weight. It's tough, man. It sucks. It's really a letdown. I mean, God, as much as we joke about it, I live with Shannon, and to know she's in that next room behind me and to know what I'm going through in a match and to know she can't come in this room to help me, or not to help in a question way, but just to put her hand on my shoulder or to look at her, which would happen in live matches when she'd be in the corner of the room and she calms me down by just looking at her. And to know that when the match is over and we get up the air, I have to go look at her and I have to sit there and go, I let you down. I'm I failed. It's tough, man, to know you failed, to fail so spectacularly like that. And people, I appreciate the fans saying we came back in the end, but we hung on. It's interesting because it didn't lead. It wasn't until round 5 where I was like, oh, we've lost this. We've just now got to hold on to not get TKO'd here. That was it, because that's what we do. We're always usually down round 1 and round 2. We always are. And when we got video games, we're like, here we go. This is going to be great. I was hoping a little bit tougher question than that. And then speed round. Oh, man. Oh, God. If I would have gotten that Eat, Pray, Love, my 5th question, I would have got it right. But I was so excited out of the gate. Yeah. And I wanted to move around. I wanted okay, burn it through. I know what this movie go. I need the seconds from this film to move on to a next question. And then and then it was the Tony Scott, and I'm like, oh God, I know it's Tony Scott, but I can't jeopardize the points. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Like, and I told Chance in our little waiting room, I was like, we're not jeopardizing points. We can't guess on this speed. We're not that far. We're not ahead. We gotta 100% know it. If we don't, we pass. So with Tony Scott, I had to just trust that I told Chance. It's like, I didn't know it 100%. You know,
like, I gotta ask you.
Yeah, but
I gotta ask you because I want to go into the specific rounds a little bit.
Sure.
Because watching some of the mental thought process stuff and what you're talking about, I think is really interesting. But there's a certain similarity between you and John Roca in that I think you're two of the most decorated players in terms of championships and wins, two of the biggest personalities in the game. But unlike, I would say, the only player in history that has this one thing with Dan Murrell, people love to take shots at you. They love to take shots and say, I mean, I'm guilty of it, right? But I've owned it and said, this is a guy that's won 4 championships because I can take as many shots as I want that Corruption's overperformed or whatever. You won 2 championships. I mean, overperform or not overperform. And maybe it's because of a round 1 or maybe streaky play at times, but consistently in those big moments you show up. You're a big game player because you win the big games. That's how you get the championships. So thinking about that and the fact that you're a guy who's done that for so long and you've won so many times, is there a part of the digital format that feels like it's not your game in a huge way and you really miss the live?
I don't. That's a great question, Ben. I don't know. I don't know because it's tough. I enjoy the digital. I enjoy the digital speed round. I prefer this way.
I would have
buzzers. Yeah, I just think, and going back in the studio, I would love a way to do it. I just don't like the buzzers. I think there's just too much room for error. On this speed round, it's my error. If I miss them, it's my fault, and it comes down to knowledge more so than fast twitch reaction on your muscle. But I don't know, I've had an up and down season with this whole digital thing. I played great and won some great matches, and I've also lost a big one. But I don't think in studio would have made any difference for me. I mean, it's tough because I would love to be able to interact more with the opponents and get in their head a little more, because that's always plays into it. Because there was a point during the match where I noticed that Bibbs and the kid were really getting nervous and starting to sweat. And they were kind of pacing back and forth. And I was like, when our lead started getting smaller and smaller, or their lead, I was like, oh, we're getting them. We're going to get them. And that would have played into it in the studio. That would have been that would have been a little more advantageous to us. I don't know though, Ben. I don't know. Because my record hasn't gone one way or the other.
You've had a good year.
I've had a solid year. I had some great runs. My IG run was when I look at it, I'm trying to look at now, my run is done for the season. I'm not going to be around anymore till next year. So my accuracy went up at least 10, 20 points. I used to be like a 60s, 70s player, and I was hitting at the 90s at the end there. So I look at that. We got our belt back for, a match. We played a great match against Founding Fathers. But I'm also, still screwing up in round 1. So it's interesting. And I don't know how much longer we're going to be doing it this way. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think live, eventually we'll be back. I think we all know that. And hopefully it's, soon. But I go back to the point that I brought up before I asked you about live. And I asked this question because I'm curious. Do you bring those shots people take? You sort of wear your emotions on your sleeve, but is that in your head? Are you still, even after 4 championships, trying to disprove these people that want to throw stones at you? Or, do you at this point just say, like, I've won more championships than almost any player that's ever played it? So what do they really still do?
I've taken it. It now comes with the territory, man. Now I'm like, it used to get me. It used to annoy the hell out of me when I would hear underrated, or not underrated, but they overrated, and it would irk me and just eat at me. And now it's to the point I was like, I'm a 4-time champion. You could say what you want, and I'm used to it now, because now people look at it, and I don't know if it's because of the faction I'm with or the new team, or it seems like there's always a team that the fans take to really quickly, and they like to see the rise of them, and like I hear the shots. I was like, should have the Punisher thing, and I'm just like, say what you will. I'm of a man, and I play the league. I don't challenge stuff like that. I don't, we made the point, though. You see us in the argument. Did Chance get a little overzealous this jump? But I said, it's like, no, wait. Is it the Punisher? We made a point to not go for it. I mean, I didn't know the whole spotlight thing because I was in my own little world there. And I see the fans come out with stuff like that. And I'm just like, there was one thread and I was like, you know what? Give them the 1 point for the TKO. It's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things at the end of the day, at the end of the year. I was just done with it. But that's my emotions. And that's why for a couple days after the match, I take off from social media and everything. I just distance myself. But is that, no, it doesn't bother me. People are always going to talk crap about me. There's a couple of people in the fan group. There's a one particular older lady that hates me for some reason. No matter what I do, she hates me. So I'm there with it.
I don't think that's really an older lady. I think I know who you're talking about.
I think who it is. I think it's an ex-girlfriend of mine that's come back and now she's.
Is that what you think? Because I know the name you're.
Thing.
I know the name you're talking about. I'm not going to dignify the name by saying it on air because I think it's a waste of all of our time. But there's this name. This name that'll make comments that's like. I remember at one point reading a thread and it was like early in the season. I think Collins had won like 2 matches or something. Yeah. And this person was like, well, and they're talking about me and they're like, well, I mean, Collins is clearly a better player than Bateman. And I was like reading this and I was like, this is intended for me to respond. This troll wants me to respond and get it. And I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
No, I'm just like, she just hates me. So I don't care at this point. But she does throw respect every now and then. But like you said, it's, I don't think I'll ever earn people's respect until I win a singles belt. There's a lot of people that that's the gold standard. And I understand that and I respect that. And that is a goal and that is will always be there. Next season's a new season too, where we're adding all the slices in and all that stuff. And it's going to be So, but as far as your question of the fans, it does not get to me anymore. I don't care. I think
Rachel and I are both curious about what you just said.
Okay.
About next season.
Yeah, Rachel it's great to hear you're already thinking about it, or and that you're in a headspace to.
Oh yeah.
You're not like, nah. Do I want to do this anymore? I've won 4 times. I'm good. I'm over this. Like that's honestly a reaction we've all had after the big losses.
Yeah, you guys can understand this. And there's been a couple times in my life in the Schmoedown where I'm like, that's it. I'm done. Yeah. I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah. I can't do this anymore. After Spectacular with Smets, that was I was like, I'm out. I'm done. Mm-hmm. And there was 1 or 2 other times in the career where I was like to Shannon, I'm like, nope, not doing this. Not doing it anymore. I don't have it in me. But this one wasn't. When I was done with this match, it wasn't like that. But Shannon knew. She's like, I'll give you your time. I'll let you take your time. But never once it entered my mind. I was like, no, I'm not done because there's still stuff I want to do. No, I like I said, this season helped me find my love of the game again. So I found that love. It's there. That's why it's so frustrating because to find the love again, to feel like you're ready to go into this championship round with your round 1, you're going to dominate and then just blow it right out the gate. It's so soul crushing. But then this weekend, just by chance, I came upon a couple quotes that like stuck to me. It's like, it doesn't matter if you fall down 7 times, what matters is getting up 8. And for me, that seems like it's my legacy. It's like it's hitting the highs, getting knocked down spectacularly, and then coming back stronger. So, and we're going to be adding the slices, the IG stuff next season, the multitude of them. So singles will be a different game next year, not just for my strengths, but also for people's weaknesses. Because, if you spin one of those, you get an opponent's choice on one of those with me, it's game over. Even if you're an Irwin or you're a Bibiani, it levels the playing field immensely. And we've talked about this before on Winston's show. I love the fact that it's going to welcome so many more players to the league. So many people that are IG players that are like, I can't go into singles, but now they can. They get a fighting chance in there.
They have 2 strengths they can request. I mean, I think it'll be really interesting to see what you do. So let me ask you a couple questions here that I think the fans are probably curious about. So the first one I think is an obvious answer, and maybe you don't know it because maybe it's not yours. I can't imagine Shannon would kick you to the curb, but
I know where this is going.
I imagine you guys are sticking with Corruption and staying a team. I would imagine that's the first obvious one.
Okay,
is that a yes?
Question. I'm not leaving Chance. Chance and I are not leaving. But you make up a great point because 3 months ago, it's Chance and I and Laura Kelly. That's what the 3 people Corruption sticks with. No questions about that. We knew we had other players, but now we have other players
yeah,
in the league.
a lot of
We
good
have
players,
Adam Collins doing phenomenal. Marisol and Adam are getting ready to go into teams. We saw Marisol in her first, I think she did a play-in, but then lost her first round, but still played great.
Yep.
Come 2 more months, it might be a conversation at the end of the year where Shannon's like, okay, let's just put it, let's say this. Let's say Adam and Marisol take the tournament.
Yep.
Let's say Adam and Marisol win from Shazam, take the belt. And let's say Adam beats Dan. Okay,
Yeah.
so who do you keep at the end of the year? You keep Chance. You keep Chance. Chance is a triple threat in all 3 leagues, and he's great. And you got to keep your belt winners. So where do I go?
It's a good question you ask, but I mean, I think you put yourself in the position that you guys are in now, the same one that any of the factions have to put themselves in. You know, talking about obviously, before I played Dan, there was the conversation of okay, and before we played Shazam, well, what if I beat Dan and what if who's the boss beats and we're double champs? Then what? Does Finstock at that point, right? So the conversation I think is irrelevant until those wins happen. And obviously, Collins has a huge match coming up. He's got a gigantic match coming up to he's continuing in this tournament, and then we're going to see what happens in the team. So I do agree. I still would find it pretty hard to believe, even if Deception was somehow able to make it happen.
Right.
I mean, Shannon's in the chat here. She can sound off if she wants.
Oh, no.
Is there any chance that you kick Mikey to the curb? I can't see it happening. Let's table that one for a second. Move on.
I know what would happen.
Wow,
there's no love in Schmoedown. Separate that out of there. But on the other hand, Ben, you know me, and Rachel, you know me, guys, and I've said it all the year. It's all about the team. It's not about me. And maybe I have to make some decisions. Go, hey, you need to keep them. Try and get me right away. If we're looking at that, Ben, I've always said I would have to be a man of my word, because all year I've been saying, take me out of the tournament, take me out of playing guy, because I got to get points. So, okay, I got to put my money where my mouth is. It is about corruption and being the best we can be, or is it my ego? So
what we're getting is a weird Christmas. Preview. We're getting an early
weird
preview
holiday
right
season
now.
here.
Deception's going to win
the
whole thing. And then Shannon's going to kick you to the curb. And then you're going to be calling me to be your new teammate. And Mike, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I'll pick up the phone, man. I got to tell you, I don't know if that's going to happen.
Really? Your IG's not that strong, pal.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding around.
So there.
I think the next question people have, and this is a real one that I would ask to most of the IG players at the top.
Oh, no.
Star Wars division. Division.
I'm going to throw it to Rachel. Rachel, would you go into Star Wars? Exactly.
It would be like a several months long process of, because we love Star Wars. We're both huge Star Wars fans, and we do very well. But the Star Wars League has proven that it's not about watching the movies.
Right.
I mean, it is, but you have to name the droid in the background. That droid is never named in the movie. That's in a script somewhere, in some compendium, Bible, encyclopedia of all the droids thing. Yeah, that's a good point. So it's a different, I mean, as much as IG is different than singles and teams, Star Wars is another level of that. But I always thought in the back of my head, that I would love to have been. I mean, Mike, you and I, and Chance now, we were the people that existed in 3 divisions and were threats in 3. What if you could make that 4?
I know.
Like it sticks in there.
See, Rachel, that's the point. It's like there is the ego in me, and to
you have
say
to
I'm
have
not,
a little bit of ego.
I'm an
in
ego
the
player, and I'm an ego player, and maybe that gets the best of me sometimes. But there is the part that's no one's done 4 leagues yet.
Yep.
And I'm kind of like, I could hang in a round 1, like a round 1 of a tournament. Mm-hmm. I could probably pass a round 1, and that would give me 1 win, and I'd be a 4 quadruple threat. So it's like, it's not out of the question. And depending on what's going on with my work, and because I don't think my job per se is coming back till next spring. So maybe I take the beginning of the year and I do some Star Wars studying, because the base knowledge is there.
60 days, man. That's what I've been saying. I could get competitive enough to win the whole thing in 60 days. That's what I've been saying.
Star Wars?
I don't think you can do it in 60 days.
Star Wars?
That's what I said. Look,
I need to take a look at your library to see what Star Wars books you have, pal, because I've got a pretty good one.
I don't know what your Star Wars base is.
I've already told everybody I'm planning on revolutionizing the game next year. I won't lose a match.
This again.
I mean, Ace said he likes Star Wars.
That's your hill you're dying on. You're not losing a match next year.
I'm not going to go into Star Wars next year. I'm not doing it. That's if I was solely doing Star Wars,
right?
That's
if you're solely
that's a
sure,
different thing, yeah.
I'm not focusing on another league. If I'm just doing Star
Yeah.
Wars 60 days, I can't do it at the same time as other stuff.
Right. So yeah, to that question, I'm thinking about it. I'm, I definitely am thinking about it. So
Yeah. People taking shots. PLD here in the super chat. Ben, I know you're Star Wars base. You can't. PLD, you don't know anything. You don't know anything. None of you know anything. Prepare yourselves. All right. So in Inner Geekdom, I imagine you will be taking another crack at that, trying to go back at it one more time. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know where. I mean, there was talk for a while of a number one contender match, but I think it was with Smets. I think that might have been it if he had lost, and now he did. But life, it happens, and that match will always be there whenever. Because it's so funny, because Smets reached out to me a few weeks ago about everything that was going down. He talked to Shannon and I to let us know, and he says, "Hey man, I'm not getting out of that rubber match with you. So don't take this." So I'm like, I'm holding him to that. So we've got that match planned, him and I, whenever that's to happen. But IG, God, we got Jandreau. Did that piss me off, man? Can I say that pissed me off?
Sure.
Absolutely.
When he came into that,
say piss, yeah.
because Christian's like, all right, Mike, we'll let you go now, and I'm like, okay. And then he popped on that screen. I almost ran into the other room, through that, and barged in on Shannon's side and just came at him. The disrespect, man, that he throws. Chance will be ready to take that belt from him.
That guy's incorrigible, man. I've dealt with heels before. I don't the bad guys or whatever, and people with attitudes in this league. But man, so I've got we talk about I don't have matches this season. I'm done, but it doesn't end for me at this point. I've got a team that I've got to get to a championship level. I've got Adam. I've got to prep for. He got one more match now in the tournament. I think they just aired his second to last.
He just he played Liz and beat her last week. So he's up. It's him versus Snyder.
So Snyder's got that match. Yep. I've got to get him ready for that. And then after that, he's got Dan if he wins. Mm-hmm. That's at least 2 more matches there. There's the whole team's tournament and Chance's match. So I had to shake it off. Monday night we were study session. Sunday night they were study session. So I had two days to pout and whine and mope about, and Shannon was a trooper about it, and she let me do it and shake it off, and I got that team now. I got to help them. So I don't know if they need it, but
look, man, I think having the support of a legend. I saw earlier in the chat here, your teammates, your faction mates were all in here, having your back, saying you were the core of the faction, you're the heart of the faction.
Oh man, God,
Mike, you're a face of the show. Like, no matter if you step down now, like when people talk about the Schmoedown, I would say you and Roka are the 2 character names who encapsulate everything this show is about. And it's like, and all of this stuff about the fans and proving ourselves, I've been there, Ben's been there. Like, we can't not be there in those moments because they throw stuff at you no matter what. And we're humans, we're not robots. But at the same time, the majority knows what you've done and what you've done for this league, and bad matches happen to everybody.
Right.
And we beat ourselves up and we pick ourselves up and we go on.
You guys also know it's like, in some people, you're only as good as your last match.
Oh God. That's their favorite.
So that does stick with you. But, and I loved, and Ben, you said it a lot, and I appreciate that. You love hearing 4-time champion. But there's one thing that sounds better than 4-time champion. It says being a 5-time champion.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm like, ooh, that's a nice little doff in my cap to be able to say I'm a 5-time champion. So it was never over for me after this match. It was never a question of I'm done. There's too much I want to do, too much I believe in. And like I said, I found the love of the game. But it is definitely I got to find out. I need to change my studying because what I did not work. But that's life. You go down a path, you try something new and it does not work. There's certain, like Rachel, we've talked in your study habits, and I don't know if that works for me. I didn't try it all the way like you'd said. I was trying something kind of modified of different competitors and what they do just to see, okay, let me see if this works. And it doesn't. So I need to, it's a work in progress. What can I say? Like Ben, like you said, you're always planning, and you're one of the best at the game and knowing the game, and your system works for you. You found that. You were able to find it. You honed in on it.
It worked well in the past. This next one is going to blow the roof
Oh,
off.
it's a whole nother system. You're like Nash there in The Beautiful Mind with all just.
Trust me, man. I'll at the end of next season. I'll talk about what I did. I'm already well into it, and it's good. Totally, completely different. So,
all right. I think that's what I need.
I guaranteed I was gonna beat Dan, and that didn't happen. So we'll see what actually happens here. But
like
I feel pretty good about it.
It's a pivot. You've got to do a pivot if you want to stay relevant. You want to stay active and competitive. You just got to pivot and try. I would give you guys a sports analogy right now, but I don't know sports, so I can't give you some kind of training analogy that a sports team would use. But
it's a different approach. You just have to find a new way to look at getting to answers in your head. And everybody is different. That's the thing. I mean, Ben, and honestly, I think Kevin Smets proved that it's doable.
Right.
Their specific processes might not be the ones for each of us. It's you've got to figure out what that process is. And Ben and I have had long conversations about the way your brain works and how you get at answers and how you figure out context clues and how you break it down and how you reach an answer. So I think it's just finding a new angle to get at movie trivia for you, and you'll crack that code. And you'll be
you've been privy to Smets's studying, right?
Yes.
He shared a little bit with me. It's like, oh no, I can't do this. This is ridiculous. But like the MP3s and listening, that's like, no, God, no, this is awful.
He's an all-timer. So we have you for just a few more minutes here, Mike. And I know there's some Streamlabs and Super Chats that I definitely want to get to here because they're important. But I've said this to you many times, and I've talked about it on the show many times. Your match against Kevin Smets, the one where you beat him at Collision, is one of my all-time favorite Schmoedown memories. It's like a great sports moment. You get so emotional. He was the unbeatable Russian. He was Drago, the whole thing, and it's such a great memory for me as a fan watching it. And I love Kevin Smets. He's one of my best friends, and I've been a big fan, obviously, of watching both of your careers in the show. So I wanted to ask you if you, in honor, obviously, of our friend who made a huge announcement this morning about fighting cancer and and he's going to beat it. If you had a particularly memorable Smets memory, because I know he's been one of your. This is the other great rival you have here on the show. Smets is the other one. I feel like that's the two.
Yeah, it's. I don't know if it's because he was such a fan. Like he was such a fan of the Schmoedown, and he would always have nothing but respect. He would always love to play you. He loved sitting in the league with you, and I love the fact that we've kind of. It's a funny. Of our characters and how it's kind of flipped where we enjoy
Ben's
this
boy
kind of
donated $50. I just want to send love to everyone on screen. Bad matches happen, but what really makes you a champion is picking yourself off the ground and charging forward with passion and resiliency. I love this stuff, and I love you, Ben.
Hashtag Ben's boy. I want to hear your story, Mike. Thank you so much.
It was just with the perfect accent. That accent was perfect. You dust yourself off and you get back into the fight, and you're a true champion. It's Kevin Smith. Like our dynamic on the show and who we are is so different, but we have kind of adapted this Captain America and Bucky Barnes thing with him and I, and it's so true to us. And it's like him and I. It's like him and I till the end of the line, and I know that with him and I in these matches, and it's just. But like it was the whole triumvirate of me and Rachel and him, and it was like this. Who will get to this and this, and she brought him in, and I remember going backstage to Rachel after watching one of his matches, like you had to bring him in, didn't you? You had to bring this kid, this machine into the league. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks a lot. And she's like, well, he's great at trivia and he's a wonderful guy. And I'm like, he is a wonderful guy. Because you want to hate him because he was so damn good when he came in like that. And I didn't want to face him. I was like, this is gonna suck. But he's so respectful, and there's never that moment of animosity ever. And but I think some of my favorite moments are not playing on the table. Oh, I'll say this. It was the dressing room in Orlando. Rachel and I had not talked. We weren't going to, we did that for the match. We don't talk to each other. We respect our spaces, and she's there with Clark, and Smets and I shared a dressing room. And it's just, he was so respectful of Rachel, but so respectful of me at the same time. And he's able to walk this balance. Like he wasn't siding with either of us,
right.
But like he knew what it meant for me to be there, because Rachel had already gotten a belt at this point, and I had lost it. And it was like this, he wants to cheer me on, but he's being respectful of Rachel and our friendship and her friendship. So he's just a good guy. Anyone that knows Kevin knows what a wonderful guy he is. It sucks because I haven't been able to play with him much in the league lately because of him being the champion and me not. And then I haven't seen him, and I love seeing him in matches. I love seeing him in at the studio, and we just sit there and go. And he does this game. I don't know if he does with you, Rachel. He always tries to stump you on questions. Oh. He's always like, he's always, hey, Mike, when was the first time the Infinity Stones is mentioned in the MCU? I'm like, it's in the post credits of Dark World. Volstagg says it. He's like, God, how did you know that? I'm like, because I'm waiting for you to ask me crap like this, Kevin. That's why. And if I don't get it right, I feel stupid, and I'm losing to a champion. So I mean, I knew what was going on, but I have no doubt he's going to beat this. I have no doubt. I mean, because the Schmoedown, he's got the community, he's got all of us there, and we're all in this together with him, and he's a fighter. So I'm not, you take it seriously, but
Yeah.
Goddard,
I think while we have Mike here, let's get some of these Streamlabs and Super Chats answered. I know we have a handful. And obviously, guys, while we have Mike, get him in. Let's take
your shots, guys. Take your shots. Let's go.
Rile him up. Look at him. He's good, man. We got his temper.
I forgot who said it. I think it's Frank Janisch that said it. He's like, I don't like a nice Mike. I like an angry Mike.
Yeah.
He said that.
Get him angry, guys.
He said that months ago. And it's true. I play better when I'm angry. I think it's a problem. Looking at it, like going in against Smets and going against Shazam, I was confident, but I was also feeling like kind of just like, this is great. We got the belt. This is that. Like I wasn't angry. And like Founding Fathers this past year, I was angry going against them. Like I had something to prove. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe I've always got to get in a headspace of being angry and needing to prove. Because I remember the post-interview or the pre-interviews for Founding Fathers, I didn't want to look at them. I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't listen to their interviews with Shazam. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm going to make fun of their name. This is going to be jokey. Here we go. So maybe that's it. Maybe I've got to play angry.
Look, you let Bibiani have fun. As he said, when he has fun, he wins.
There we go. I shouldn't have let him have fun. I should have come at him.
Let him have fun. Yeah.
Ralph Roy. Mike, you were a 4-time champion. You will bounce back. Every champion comes back stronger than ever. Same with IG this year. Plus, you and Chance regaining the title back. You helped Corruption to first in the standings, and we Corruption fans have your support.
Thank you, Ralph. He's one of the great ones. Ralph's one of the great ones in our league. Oh, boy. Yeah, but to know you let down people like Ralph, you're like, oh, God, I really screwed the bet on this one, didn't I, guys?
Know, man. Everybody's excited before that match. There's nothing worse. But then you figure if it's not you, it's the other guy, and somebody lets somebody down.
Someone's always got. I mean, and to see Bibbs and the kid and their enjoyment and they just have, and you've got to keep up the show when it's on, and you can't. I know Christian has gotten on my case about breaking the show down sometimes and just showing respect, but those guys are wonderful players, and then there was another thing I was upset about. I was very upset I couldn't give Bibbs and Brennan a harder match. I really wanted to, make them fight more for it. I really think they deserved a harder match from Chance and I. Wasn't in the cards this time.
Yeah.
By the way, Rachel, you said you'd possibly come back to the Schmoedown if there were IG teams, and you can team up with Mike, right? Let's get IG teams going because we need Mike and Rachel. Best rivalry in the Schmoedown ever. Also, we love you, Kevin. #SmashCancer.
True. Oh, yeah. I'll stand by that one. But here's the thing. I don't know if Mike would have me because he's got Chance over there.
Oh, you're going to make me choose now, aren't you? Oh, God, you make me choose. Just because I know the fans, I think it would be amazing.
You and I would not be beatable because we have each other's opposite strengths.
I know we do. See, that's what I got to look at. Like Chance and I, our strengths in IG are very similar. Although he covers a couple areas that I don't, and I know there's one that I cover that he doesn't know very well. But
Jeremiah Morris donated $20. Mike, you play better when you're angry, but unfortunately you like Ben won't play anymore this year. Drip drip #Ben sucks.
All right. Okay, Jerry. All right.
Wow.
That's
there it is.
Just so you guys know, that's also #Ben's boy. But Mike, if I can hear you correctly, what you're saying is that once I won't pick up your call, you'll go down the line, then you'll call Rachel after you get kicked to the curb by Corruption. So that's how this is.
It depends on how many times I'm going to let the phone ring, Ben. For you, I probably let it ring about 15 to 20 times, buddy. I'll hang in there. Ben.
Please record this.
Yeah. Maximilian. Looking at singles tournament, who had the tougher road to the finals, Collins or Snyder?
Ooh.
I mean,
I don't know.
Snyder
had to beat Montano. He had to beat Paul Oyama. That was his, I think.
Paul Riley and Irwin.
Yeah.
I would.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
On singles,
yes. Tom.
I'd say Collins because I was in Snyder's bracket, wasn't I? Yeah.
Yeah.
People were saying that my bracket was the easier one. You had me, Perry, Riley.
You had that
Oyama.
quadrant, but the quadrant. But the other
bracket.
quadrant had Tom and
right.
Irwin, who's
I'm thinking
not,
brackets, the little quadrants.
yeah. But you can't argue, and I still think the closest match of all of them was the Kid versus Adam Collins.
Yeah, what a match.
You know,
but then you had Roca right off the bat there.
He had Roca. Yeah. Oh, that's actually a really tough call.
Yeah.
Liz had the toughest couple of matches. Chance and Bibbs.
Oh God.
I was gonna say that Liz did an amazing run herself. If she had won that match, I think it would have been unquestionably Liz. But I think Collins probably gets it. But I think the real answer is Andres Ace Cabrera.
Oh my God! Shut up.
Yeah, Liz. It's when you're seeing this stuff come through. It's like someone like Liz coming through like that. That was what a run. And then even just Perry, he had a great run there. He took Riley to the end there. I believe, right? Yeah, she took him. Yeah. Riley still passed her, but it was like she gave him a run, man. Mm-hmm. So this tournament was upset city. It was awesome to watch. Yeah. Awesome as a fan to watch when I was taken out, and I was like, oh, let's just sit back and watch now.
I think you just got to go. It's Collins because his round one matchup after the play-in, right? He had to win the play-in was to play Roca. Yeah. So I think it's definitely Collins had the tougher, which makes sense. He's a rookie. He's supposed to have the harder seating.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know. Paul Oyama, Irwin, and Mark. I know Mark Irwin, isn't his former champ. People say he's not his former champ self, but he's still a former champ. That's 3 former champions that Snyder had to play. This isn't taking anything away that Adam did.
I think it's incredibly impressive. I think it's incredibly impressive and really, really, really hard to do. I think my only point being that already we just know with the Schmoedown, just winning a match doesn't even matter who you're playing against is already hard. So the fact that Collins had an extra match that he had to win to even get in, and then the person that he played in his first match in the tournament is arguably the second best player that's ever played in the Schmoedown. Yeah. I mean, no matter how good the players in your bracket are, 2 matches, including Roca, in your first 2 is already so daunting.
And I'll say this, if Collins was on the other side of the bracket, I think he would still be where he is in the tournament. So I don't think his side of the bracket mattered to him.
He's pretty good.
It's insane, that kid.
But it's rare.
He's crazy. It's crazy, this kid.
Yeah, he's a good player. Just Kuo. What's with Dagnito's dig at Ben during the undercard interview?
He's an idiot.
I don't know, because Ben keeps digging at him too. This is a 2-way street.
I got no support from an idiot manager who coasted by for years on the goodwill of talented players, and now it's all gonna come home. He's gonna be exposed. That's what's gonna happen. I don't even think I have to really make this case. I think everybody knows he's a moron. I just had his back for a long time.
Are you assuming he's not keeping you? What if he decides he wants to keep you?
I will never play for Dagnino again. I'm a free agent. I'm going to go where I want to go. He could give me $1 million cash.
He doesn't have to. You don't have to stay with him if he wants you.
No.
The players have the choice, man. Yeah.
You're making waves, Ben. You're making waves.
I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm going to bring my new giant supercomputer system to a new faction, and I'm going to have a new setup, and I'm going to bury Dagnino and everything he stands for.
Okay.
Revengeful.
All right. Oh,
it's gonna be great. Oh boy. It's gonna be great. What else we got?
Coy for KO. I'll never forget watching San Diego live match while visiting my aunt's house and forcing everyone to watch. Great memory. Also, one time you responded to a DM after a win and it was dope. You and Ben make me love the game more every time you play.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate that. Yeah, I do love interacting with people. I don't do it as much on Facebook anymore because I try to distance that, not for any other reason. I love interacting with fans, but it's that's where a lot of the whole polls and all that. I've stayed away from looking at polls. I've seen you lose your mind publicly more than once on there. So and I think that was a big thing of you guys. I didn't leave the group. I just muted it. But Ben, I think you made a point. There was a whole storyline of you me interacting with the fans because I would lose my. What was it 2 years ago? I would lose my mind every time at those things. But now if I see a poll and I'm winning, I disregard it. I'm usually the guy that's not going to win any poll ever. Yeah. But then the comments are Kalinowski's got it. He's a 4-time champ. We love him. He's gonna win this. We can't believe it. This other team sucks. But on Twitter's better. I like interacting with people on Twitter then.
The polls will drive you. The polls will drive you nuts.
Oh, drive you nuts.
Occasionally somebody other than Dan Murrell wins, but rare. So
I'll say this. It was funny. I was going through my old phone, getting rid of old pictures, and I saw one. Rachel was our match, and It's like match before you and I, and then you and I in Orlando, and like I had won polls, like it was like by 5 votes or something. But I remember screenshotting, like, look at this, I'm ahead. That's when I was the flavor of the month. But we were all in favor of someone at one point.
Yeah. Soul Warrior, what are your thoughts on Liz Shannon Miller not guessing 3 after Collins guessed 2 in the how many appearances Arnold makes in the Expendables franchises? Question, given that Christian, with his bad eyesight, was squinting his eyes for a full minute.
I thought that was such an interesting like guess situation because I've seen the first Expendables movie. I know the casts mostly of the other Expendables movies. I don't like those movies particularly, but I was like, if it's just 3, if the answer is just he was in all the Expendables movies, this doesn't feel like this would be a question they would even bother writing. But I guess that's the whole idea. That's the whole point, right?
Dan Patrick being tricky. I guessed 2 as well. I was like, I don't remember being in the 3rd one.
Well, he's just in the final scene.
Right. I remember the first film and the second. I was like, he's not in the 3rd. So I would have got it wrong. I guess 2.
Yeah. But it's interesting that Liz on that side of things, 2 was the wrong answer. So she had a guess of 1 or 3.
Yeah,
so she had a 50-50 shot at it, and she went 1 because again, it's a small scene. So like you said, trick question. But although the thing about watching Christian scrutinize the screen, I mean, I haven't played digitally, but I can tell you even live, I'm not paying much attention to what Mark and Christian are doing.
No.
Like we're listening to the questions and we're dealing with our own inner monologues to get to the answers. So what they're doing up there is usually blocked out. So I don't think there was much paying attention on her part to be like, he's scrutinizing his TV or his computer. So it must be a 3 over a 1. Like
2 or a 3. Yeah.
That's a little too much of a stretch, I think.
Rats and King, we all know that Ben is holding out for the I, Diana Jones division.
It's a big time salute to you, Call Sign Excalibur, my guy. I'm not holding out for anything. I'm just I'm so excited. Like this is what I'll tell you, just in terms of what all the comments I'm making. This is the first spectacular, the first tournament since I joined the Schmoedown I'm not in. It's the first one. I'm just sitting back. Since I played Dan, I do this show and I watch and I discuss it, but I don't have any matches coming up. And I more than likely won't even play a match till probably like next February. So I've got months and months and months to just observe and think about it and make sure I take my time. I come up with exactly how to do it. And I'll make next season the most memorable one I've ever done. And I have plenty of time to prepare for it. My only question is, and this is one that I imagine you, Mike, have as well. We know they're going to introduce new slices. We know they'll announce them at some point. Probably it'll be announced in December. How much time from the time they announce those new slices and the first match is realistic and reasonable to learn them? In my opinion, they should announce them now. That's like the more time you have, because if they announce like 30 new categories, 40 new categories for next year, they announce them in December and the first match is like January 30th or something.
That's on top of all the ones they just introduced this year.
I think they're going to introduce a whole bunch of new ones. I think
like
they
Tyler
should.
Perry, Spike Lee, and all that. Like. Yeah,
because I actually think the best way you can keep this game interesting, the way you can make this game continue to be competitive is to, and think about like, this year there was definitely a focus, adding more actresses, more women of color, more just directors of color, period. This was like something that was a focus on. There's so many more, I feel like, that are totally significant and also really cool genre plays. Like James Wan at this point should have a slice. I mean, James Wan is right. That's one of the only. I don't know. There's just I think there should be 30 to 50 new slices. I just want them announced now, not on like January 2nd and like 3 weeks till the first match or something.
I mean,
wheel slices are going to become weapons. These matches are going to come down to like those broad categories and stuff. Like people are just going to ignore those and go become experts in as many of those narrows that they can and use that. And you're going to see a lot more lopsided matches because it's going to be the luck of the wheel is going to become so much bigger if there's that many more slices and they're that narrow.
It's, I thought about it. It's like, there's no point in studying classics. There's no point in trying to watch classic movies. There's a way to study it.
Wrong, my friend.
Okay. All right. Here
Wrong
we go.
Indeed. Wrong indeed.
What are you going to do? The AFI top 100 films in IMDb and Wikipedia and watch the trailer for all 100 films, or going to Amy Adams and going, I can do this. I can deep dive her in a week and make sure I'm an expert on her. There's after the whole Bond debacle last year, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go for a couple slices that people they're not expecting for me to use. I haven't used them yet that I become, I would think, incredibly proficient at. I haven't used them yet. I haven't need to, but there's 2 or 3 others that I took and was able to, over the course of a week, people complain about Bond. That's 24 films. That's an easy, it's an easier. But then there's so many like Tarantino, Apatow, Amy Adams, who are a lot smaller that you can do. Like Rachel, you said, is like you just weaponize them. You go and you pick a few, and just broaden your base. I mean, but I miss the days of action adventure being on the wheel. It's like,
I mean, totally. But this is what I would say in response to the whole idea. I'm kidding. You can't study classics. If they want to ask you 4 classics questions that you don't know the answers to, it's 50 years of movies. There's no way you could possibly do it.
Ben, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm going to button on that.
This is what I would say. It's that basically, if I think, horror or comedy is a great category for me, like I love that category, and I go against you, Mike, and my theory is, all right, so I need to beat Mike. And the only way to do it in this day and age, because of the way that everybody studies, is I'm going to probably have to go all my questions right, maybe save 1. Maybe if I miss my 5, he'll miss his 5 or whatever. So pretty much in round 2, when you only have 8 available points, 6 and them getting a steal, not enough. You can't go even 7 points these days really isn't enough to beat the best players. So the only way you can really go into the game anymore is to think, I pretty much just have to go perfect in round 2. I have to be ready. And you know what? A category you won't go perfect in round 2? One that encompasses something like 2,000 or 5,000 movies. One that encompasses 30 movies. I can watch those 30. I can have deep, deep, deep knowledge of those movies. They can't really get me unless they're trying to cheat me on Amy Adams, because they could say like, what color is her blouse in the opening scene? You'd be like, that's not a real question. Otherwise, I will know the answers to everything in this narrow category because I'm prepared for it.
Right.
You won't. You just won't in a category that you think you're an expert of that's broad, because how could you? You can't prepare for a broad category. It's impossible. Anyone who says different is wrong. You won't get perfect every time.
I agree 100%. And that's why with IG coming in, I'm like, oh, that's 12 other slices that I can, go perfect in. But I agree. I'm on the same page with you. It's just classics. I mean, even, dramas. We those questions, dramas. Like I look at it like with Perry and I, on new releases, I wasn't thrilled with it. Just by chance, those 4 questions I got were 4 movies I had not seen. And I watch a lot of movies, especially new releases, but I was like, oh, what are the odds that I got 4 movies that I've never seen before? So I was able to navigate it slightly. But man, it just sucks. Yeah. But that's the wheel, man. That's where the game is won and lost.
And that's why those categories have to stay in play. Yeah, there's still always going to be 2 broad categories up there. There's always going to be a decade up there. There's always going to be that outlier, the movie release dates, the directors. Yeah, like we have to make sure that the people who have the broad knowledge, that there is something, to be earned. Like that should be a help to you. I'm
one of those players when I watch Adam Collins, and he gets the wheel. He's like, I really like this one, but I like another one better, but I'll stick with this one. And he still goes perfect in it. And I'm like, it's players like him, like Irwin, man. He's so scary to me, like Irwin, because his knowledge is, when he doesn't know it, he's like, I didn't know that. But it's so broad. I'm just like, that round 2 with those guys, that's a tough round.
I want Irwin's
his calm.
His calmness. Like I just want that attitude going into if I know it and chances are I know it, I'm gonna recall it, it'll be fine and I'll be good. And I mean, it doesn't always work out for him. And the horns question notwithstanding, he missed the Forrest Gump quote, which many of us were like, how do you not know peas and carrots? Like that is a very strange thing that he didn't know for a lot of people.
I will say this, before I would have answered that, in my head I was like, is it peanut butter and jelly? I was like, no, that doesn't sound right. Oh, peas and carrots. But for a second I was like, is it peanut butter and jelly?
Peanut and jelly he knew was wrong. It's the same reason I knew it was wrong when I guessed it, but you guess it because it's the easy go-to. We have got a few more we got to get to before we let you go here, Mike. So what do we got, Goddard?
Teresa Sky, love and support to Kevin. Mike, you've done so much for the league. Your passion is truly inspiring. I hope you will play for a long time.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's like I'd said, this was not probably the toughest loss outside of Smets. It's spectacular. But I'm not going anywhere. And part of it comes, and you guys both know this, and I know you feel that way as well. Like with what Christian's built, I truly believe in it. I truly believe in what he's done, and I'm honored to be a part of it. in any way that I can. So, and the fans have given me so much, like they've given you guys. It's like it's a community, and they've given me so much and supported me in other avenues and my acting work, and they reach out to casting directors on Twitter and stuff like that. And it's so wonderful to see this community. So I have to give back as well. So
Eric Flint. Hey guys, I was wondering exactly how Dan Murrell's move will affect his Schmoedown career next year when we return to in-person matches. Does it affect his draft prospects or the status of the team founding fathers? Thanks so much, and my prayers to Smets.
He's Dan Murrell. Anybody who wants him and can get him, they'll take him, number one, without any second thoughts. I don't know. Founding Fathers is about to go into the team's tournament, so I think a lot of their future depends on how that goes, and then what Tom wants to decide. But we have players who, Alex Damon lives in Atlanta. Chance lives in Arizona. Even Janine lives in Northern California.
That girl,
the way she drove down every week.
Oh my God, every weekend she was driving down.
Yeah, like it's a lot to ask of them, but a lot of the players are willing to do that. And I also think somebody like Dan will likely be flying to LA on occasion for other projects as well. So I don't think it, precludes him from playing. I think that there'll just be a lot more scheduling that has to be done in advance. It won't be like, hey, can you play this Friday? That won't happen too often.
It might be like, hey, you've got 2 or 3 matches in a day, but that's what you got to do.
Possibly, yeah.
I think with the autonomy that Skybound offers the league in terms of schedule and all that, my guess is that if the big contract players are players that would play between, let's say, like 6 and 10 times in a year, if you fly into town, you're here for 3 or 4 days, you can probably play a singles match and a teams match in that time. If you're a big player like Dan, 2 to 3 year matches are probably live events anyway. One of them is spectacular, presumably, because he's almost always there. That's right there. It's only a couple trips. And I think in the course of a year, that's kind of the support that Skybound would offer, is the ability to get a star like him involved. So I don't think Dan's not going to play 13 times in a year. He's not that guy. That's what you do. That's what you do.
He doesn't need to play that. He doesn't need to play that many times. Yeah, he's always playing championships.
It's like, you, Mike, I think you're the same way. I'm that same way at this point. We've been in it long enough. The likelihood that you're losing and so middle of the pack that you're in both tournaments playing all the time, you're probably in number 1 contenders and in title matches, and you're in big live events. You're probably playing 5-6 times out of 12 months is probably the guess. Maybe you're in a tournament, but often we're not. So it feels like that kind of frequency, like you would have done in a younger season. Yeah, I think it's not as big of a demand for a guy like Dan.
Yeah, he's such a big part of the Schmoedown. So they'll make it work. We'll make it work.
Exactly.
Teddy Bear. Hello, all. Been a huge fan for years. Question: if each of you started your own factions next year, who would be your top 3 picks? Thanks, and hashtag Smash Cancer. We don't have time for top 3, but give us your first round draft pick, everybody.
Oh my God,
Mike.
I mean, it's just Dan.
You pick me, Rachel?
Yeah, I would. You'd pick a triple threat. If you're your number 1 pick, I would always say that's the smartest move to make. And
oh my God, my Rachel.
It's Dan. It's always Dan.
Are you playing Rachel?
Most of the fans are agreeing. I'm not answering that right now.
Okay, then. Oh God, Chance or Adam? Yeah, Chance or Adam.
God forbid. Does Adam want to play IG?
I think he does.
Of course he does.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so going off my head, I was like, Chance is a stronger IG player, but I think Adam might take him in singles. Oh, yeah, it's one of those two. I'd have to flip a coin, and I'd flip a coin. I'd be happy with either one. Cool. Maybe go Chance.
PLD says Ed Harris slice, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right.
And I think that's it, guys.
All right.
That's it. All right, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show this week, my friend. As always, huge part of the Schmoedown. Sorry to see about the loss.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. No,
keep your head up.
Pleasure. Yeah.
I'll be ignoring your call when you call me. So
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
All right. Thanks, guys. All love and respect to Kevin Smets, and thanks for watching the show today.
See you next week.
Bye, guys. Thanks, guys.